Welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, the Fantasy Clown. Today, we're going to take a look at FD Dueces Wild, a league that started up in 2020, and kind of look at where the roster is today, maybe how it's progressed from the beginning, and just give you an idea of the team build, how we started, and then where it transitioned to, and how we got to where we are today. And so, just taking a look at the team in general. What we're facing is here going into week 6. We're not where we want to be for sure. As we're starting off with a record of 1-4, so really in must-win territory here. And I always think that you have to get to 8-6 to make the playoffs. And as we've looked back, we have had some success with this team. So it's important to coming off of 2 back-to-back playoff berths. So, want to make sure that we get started here on the right track this year, as well. And so really have to overcome this. So looking at the team a little bit and what we're going to go to bat with here this week, it looks like we're weak at quarterback. I mean, we do have Brock Purdy, but I'm gonna give Sam Howell the start this week, and we're going to rely on some, returning injured running backs, or it looks like with Ford with a questionable tag. And so as I'm looking at this team, we are going to have Javonte Williams here in the early game this week, and we're going to get that. And it did warrant that we're not going to go all in on the Thursday night game where we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Sky Moore on the bench. And I think one of the important distinctions with this team is, we've spent a lot of draft capital on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and that shows how some of those picks can really age poorly if you put too much of your assets there. Now, luckily we were able to get Breece Hall here, and so we do have a decent team to go win, but really up against it, as I look at this week and playing Z Flu Senior, who's 2-3, and so the desperation, seems to be there, for sure, as you kind of look at our starting lineup and what we're doing. We do have Gibson, would like to be better than that, but unfortunately with some bye weeks, this week, and having to have people like I just missed it, but I guess we do have. I was thinking George Pickens, is on bye, and he'd be a normal starter for us there. So, and then Traylon Burks, we're not sure if he's going to be able to play this week, so we've kind of got concerned about his output as well. So sometimes when I get into that situation, I really want to play the Thursday night guys. I don't want to leave myself, with nothing to play. So, definitely want to do that. As we look at kind of how we got to this point, we have to first go the whole way back to 2020 when this league really started. And I picked out of the 12 spot, so picking at the very end of the draft. And this particular build with starting two quarterbacks, I started running back heavy. And so that's kind of where I was mentally back at that time. I know a lot of people think of me as the quarterback guy, but here I started with Jacobs and Sanders at it's the first 2 picks. And, while that's, that's aged pretty well. Like, I feel like both of those guys are still feature backs in their offenses. So I'm not unhappy with that. And Daniel Jones seems to have come on pretty well. Drew Lock, and back then he was starting for Denver. So I guess I understand how that makes sense. And as I go down the list, it looks like Hawkinson, good pick there. And then there's some funny picks. I mean, obviously Trubisky missed on that. He only started 1 year, but Herndon, we actually thought he was going to be good. Marlon Mack back then was going to be good. And so there was a lot of things. And then I'm looking at the very end of the draft where I was drafting all these backup quarterbacks that didn't amount to much. But look at the other players that were picked there. I mean, Josh Reynolds has gotten a cup of coffee. I see Logan Thomas in that first round. But other than that, there are just a lot of rounds of non-quarterbacks that were nothing, where I was actually getting points with RG3 different times, PJ Walker, guys like that. So, they were at the end of the draft, but there was something that really, when you're building your draft, it's kind of make sure those first couple rounds really set the stage for your franchise, and then you always have an ability to come back if you stay young. And so at the end of that year, I was actually, had a record of 1-12 and finished in 12th place. So that lines up real nice for the 21 first round pick, in the rookie draft. But we'll first look at where things were in 2020. We did our rookie draft separately. So because I had the last pick, then that gave me the first pick, but I traded that away. to get future capital, which you'll see is really what's built the team real young, and that was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, I did get him back eventually in some trades, but there was definitely an ability to really do well with trading that away and getting future draft capital when he was picked there. And so I don't have a whole lot to show for that particular draft that year in 2020 on my team, but we were able to. Looks like I got Pittman there somewhere, in some sort of trade, but I was kind of trading around, and we'll take a look at some of the trades, downstream a little bit and where they were, but just to kind of look at, what we did there. But when we start to look at 21, that's where I started to really develop this team and, eventually moved on from Trevor Lawrence. But, this is where, got Kyle Pitts out of this draft and, was able to really build the team. And, a miss with Zach Wilson, really. I mean, he's sitting there. He's not as good as I once, as we thought he was back then. And, so that really, hurt this team. But then you start to look at guys like Michael Carter, Kellen Mond, and it's a good reminder of how fast guys drop off, when you go round. So when you're trying to acquire a third-round pick, it could be Kellen Mond. Like, there's just not much there. I mean, you could be the lucky person that got Nico Collins, but you really look up and down the third round and there's not much there. Davis Mills started for a minute, for a year. You got some starting, points out of him, but there's just not much there once you start getting to the third round. Even the second round is full of misses. Now there's Amon-Ra, but beyond that, and Eli Moore, but you also have guys that, haven't really produced. And, like Kyle Trask and Michael Carter was a one year thing. Bateman was always thought to be better than he's really, his outcome has been. Looking at fast forward that to 2022, and so after the 2021 season, finished 8-6 in sixth place, lost in the second round of the playoffs. So felt like when you go from 1-12 to 8-6, that's a good progression. We start to look at 2022, and here we're making more picks and picking later, at the Chris Olave level, but I had made enough trades that we got Breece Hall out of this deal. And so, really have some good players and, was able to get Pickens and Wandell. So had all those picks. And so you never know when you trade back in 2020, where those 2022 picks are going to end up, so you can always get kind of, even though my team was pretty good, it was on the edge of becoming real good. I was able to get that. Now, last year it didn't work out as good. Went 7-7, so 1-12, 8-6, then back to 7-7. Still made the playoffs in the sixth spot, but important to kind of know that the team kind of started to regress, and so I really should have paid more attention to probably that, because sitting at 1-4, I feel like now where's the team going? Even though I looked at the 23 rookie draft. Was able to keep adding. Now, again, we're taking guys like Will Levis, and that didn't age well so far. Like that pick didn't age well. Luckily, we were able to, acquire some more first round talent and some, so that we have extra players that, the team is really coming on and we feel full of quarterbacks, with this team. But we're able to retain guys like Pitts and Hawkinson at the tight end. In a two tight end start. So, I feel like there's pieces here that really can take this team to a winning team. However, it's now it's got to perform, and I get alarmed when teams go from good to bad. And so as we sit here today, we're 2 games out of the playoffs, or 2 wins out of the playoffs. So I need to pick up 2 wins somewhere, and so the time to start winning is really now with this team. And so, it's all based on the build. We're going to review some trades, and as those trades come up, I'll kind of try to walk us through, what I was thinking about when we made those trades and maybe the why behind some of them. And it's going to go from the most recent trade I made in this league to back to the first one. And so just recently made this trade where I picked up George Pickens, and really this was an age trade. So, DJ Moore played real well, but I basically was able to gain 4 years of age with this trade. So, this was just one time I saw that, hey, I could get younger, and take a chance to get a quality receiver 4 years younger. So that's what the even up trade was. As we look at the next trade, I mean, I try to make very few as these teams go and kind of let them perform, as we go. This is a trade where basically I was acquiring a quarterback, which you see that I'm now starting. So got a draft pick and a quarterback. So we have some future capital. We can take a shot, dart throw, and we gave up a receiver. We have plenty of receivers. We're not wondering what to do with receivers. So this trade has aged really well. I'm real happy with it. Looking at the next trade, as I think as we start to see these trades, we'll see how they, really, kind of begin to, set a stage for where we are. This was just kind of, selling a running back that was sort of ending the reign, there, and just picking up some draft capital for next year to kind of make sure that we're going to be able to rebuild. So that's what we have there. Just adding some draft capital in case this year doesn't go as well as I want it to go. I mean, I feel like I don't feel like Algier would do much for our team, much more than, I may be forced to have to start CEH, but, he's just as likely to have a game tonight as well as anybody else. So, looking at the next trade, Kate Otten, this is the kind of league where if you can buy a tight end cheap, when you start two, it's worth doing. And so, I went and got him, and so I have a couple backup tight ends to fill 4 spots, 2, and it felt like a good move to just pick up a starting tight end. And looking at this trade, this is where kind of was where Trevor went, and so this did not age well. So I look at some trades and I'm like, wow, I went and got Trey Lance and I gave up Trevor Lawrence. At that time, it felt like at the beginning of last year, it felt like a good move. With the 23-201, I guess I'm anxious to see what that actually became. I think that was. Do I have Brown on my team? I think we have Brown. We got the Cincinnati running back out of that deal. So it wasn't a barn burner. Oh, I guess it was Tajay Spears. That's what it became. Tajay Spears was the player there. So a couple running backs that we have. Yeah. Cool. Sent out James Robinson and Hollywood to get DJ Moore and Brandon Ayuk. So you see that really. when you start to look at it, I sent out Hollywood and James Robinson, and I basically ended up with Ayuk and Pickens, at the end of the day. So good, I do that trade every time. That one started to age even better as we looked. This is where we received Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and back into the fold. And I don't know if this has aged well. I guess, it's getting younger without Connor and Mike Williams. And as we sit here today, just having the 2024 first seems to make a lot of sense. So, that seems to work. Looking at the next one, sent off Mac Jones and but to get a premier receiver and a first, and that's always what we try to do is see if we can get some first round picks. It looks like that's where I got Christian Watson with that first round pick. So that was the player. So two receivers for Mac Jones is what that trade ended up being. Looking at this trade, this was didn't age well. This is where Gibson came from. I actually gave up Najee Harris, and I was really trying to rack my brain as to when Gibson was ever worth more than Najee Harris in my mind, and I'm not sure. I know I've been down on Najee Harris, but not sure where this even made sense. As I think back, not a lot of different in age, so kind of feels like a dumb trade and a trade to trade and something I can learn from. As far as that goes. This is just recouping some capital. There's some late round picks, probably needed to make a roster move. And rather than drop Duvernay, I got a couple picks late in the draft and see what they become. I mean, as it turned out, Kyle Phillips, Daniel Bellinger were the picks. So that's what they became. Looking at this, just sent off Keyshawn Vaughn got a 2022 fourth. Looking at that, that was looks like that was Danny Gray. I'm not sure if he's even on the team anymore, but yeah, Keyshawn Vaughn might have been a casualty as well, though, had he stayed on the team. This was a cool trade. Actually, I never remembered where I made this trade, but Ryan Fitzpatrick for a first and 2/3. I mean, that feels like a good move. This is where Treylon Burks came from. He was the first round pick there. So, that was Treylon Burks and see who else was in that trade. It looks like Sam Howell was part of that trade. So Sam Howell, Treylon Burks for the first and the third, in that trade. And here we, definitely would do this every time. Pittman for a running back that no longer plays, the Michael P. Ryan. So, we take Pittman there. And so that was a good trade and aged really well. And, this is selling off, and this is, I guess, how I had Vaughn. But it looks like I got all those first round picks, and that seemed to make a lot of sense when we stop and look at it, there. Looking at Earth Does Black, this is where Breece Hall came from. So he was that 2022 first, and Wan'Dale Robinson was the 2022 third. So that's kind of where that was. And if I'm looking here for the first there, and at this time, in fairness to the other team that I made the trades with, he was a little bit better, but Kyle Pitts was part of that trade at that time as well. And let's see, the other one was, it looks like Najee Harris. So Najee Harris and Breece Hall, Kyle Pitts, and Wan'Dale Robinson for Josh Jacobs. So that aged pretty well as well. And yet that his team was good, so he was able to, really get some money for that. So I think that's an important distinction as well. So looking at all those trades, it feels like a lot of trades, but a lot of them were in the early part of this as I was building. And as you can see, down to one or two trades. And I look back at some of those and find like 3 trades that didn't make sense, right? So, my goal will always be to make less trades and even shrink that down so that I don't make such mistakes going forward. So really enjoyed having you guys here watching kind of the build. And then it'll be interesting to see how does FD Dueces Wild do. And I'm really focused on, just making it profitable. Right now, I have $180 wrapped up into this team, for 4 years and going into year 4. And winning one first place is 300. So that's actually 6 years worth of dues, if you win one. So you need to win one out of every 6 to break even. But there are some other payouts that this league has. So they have a second and third place payout. They have a total points payout, and then they have a win the division payout. So they really reward good regular season performances. And I always play to get to the playoffs and then kind of get lucky. So I haven't gotten to a point where I'm winning divisions yet, but really we'll want to keep building the juggernaut. But real happy overall with the youth of the team. Kind of disappointed in where the team is today as we sit here 1-4, but really, looking to take this team to the next level. And I guess 2 more wins at 3-4. And I'll think this team really has a good shot. So, kind of in must-win territory with this team. And love to hear what you guys think. Hit the comments, ask questions. Any questions you have, I'd love to answer those. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. That always helps us so you're notified every time that we have a new video drop. I'd really appreciate that. And so that's all for now. Looking forward to any interaction you have, here on the chat as we'll really look to answer those questions. So long till next week.